some of the players in the futures section who are there, and as Gukesh makes his way in to the playing hall and meets the ECU president Zurab Azmai Parashvili, and Vincent and Gukesh will play each other. You have this little girl here who wants an autograph from Gukesh before the game, and Gukesh is kind enough to oblige there. Handshake there. Vincent and Gukesh, of course, excellent friends of each other. We must remind you that Vincent helped Gukesh to win the World Championship match as his second, and here we can see that in this tournament Gukesh has had 4 draws and 3 losses. Meanwhile, Vincent has also not had a particularly great event, but the last game that he had won against Anton Guyaro gets him the best game prize, and that's there before every round, and it's a slightly motivating for these players when their game gets selected as the best game prize. We have the guest of honor here who's going to make the first move on the board of Gukesh. Always a nice memory for the chief guest there as he plays the move pawn to e4. So many photographers there, so many videographers, and the game has begun. A handshake here, and off we go. Pawn to e4 by Gukesh, and e5 played by Vincent. Knight to f3, knight c6. Will we see the Italian here? No. Gukesh goes for the Spanish, the Ruy Lopez, a6, and now plays bishop to a4. Vincent brings his knight out to f6. This will be interesting to see that who brings in the first surprise, who is better prepared for the game. Castles here for white, and now bishop to e7. White rook comes to e1, and you have pawn to b5, bishop b3, black castles, and c3 played. c3 with the idea of d4. Here d6 is the main move, but of course there's the Marshall gambit with pawn to d5, and Vincent plays it. E takes d5. Generally white players do not allow the Marshall gambit by playing, let's say, pawn to a4 instead of c3, but now that it's on the board, Gukesh chops off the pawn in the center, and what Marshall's idea was that in return for the pawn that he has lost, he would get, let's say, for after c6 here, which is the main move, he plays it. You get your bishop to d6, you get your queen to h4, your bishop is here, and you get plenty of compensation. So d3 played, and now bishop d6 is by far the main move in the position, but Vincent plays a move that is lesser played. It's actually championed by Shashi Kiran, who has played it twice in correspondence chess, but this move does not surprise Gukesh. He makes his move instantly, knight d2, and Vincent goes pawn to a4. So one of the ideas here is to soften up the queen side with the moves pawn to a3, even b4. So bishop drops back to c2, and now a3 could be a nice move. Yes, he plays pawn to a3. If you take, there is knight takes c3 hanging. So Gukesh comes back, rook e1, and if you take here, I think white is better with the extra pawn. So b4 played. Very interesting move. If you take the pawn here, I can take back with the knight. Looks possible. But Gukesh pushes the pawn to c4. He's at 1 hour 24 minutes. And bishop f6 played by Vincent, take here is met with 8x b2 with a nice position. So Gukesh now plays pawn to d4 in 4 minutes. This could very well be his preparation. He's asking black to take the pawn and this bishop opens up. So bishop d4. And now the point of this very cool line is that after takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. Look at this, Gukesh, we are on move 19. Gukesh has 1 hour 21 minutes. And now he's going to sacrifice here with bishop takes h7. He does it. Takes. King takes. 39 minutes for Vincent. 1 hour 22 minutes for Gukesh. Check. And king comes back. And now queen takes b2. So b4 pawn under pressure. White is still a pawn up, but Vincent goes pawn to c5. And he tells Gukesh that I'll get back this pawn and I'm completely fine. I have the bishop here. Gukesh goes knight c4. Now taking the pawn would be a blunder because of the fork. So that's the reason why he goes bishop a6. But now I can solidify the extra pawn with knight e3. So Gukesh does get a very decent position out of the opening. His opening innovation has worked, and maybe he's still in his prep with 1 hour 20 minutes. He has 55 minutes lead on the clock. He goes rook e d1. Actually, rook a d1 was also possible, but rook e d1, he wants to keep the rook controlling the a2 pawn. And now the rook jumps into a3. A good move there by Vincent Keymer. Next up could be queen a5, rook a8, and you are going after the a2 pawn. d6 played. And if you take queen d6, there is knight c4 fork because the bishop is pinned. So he goes rook e8, activating the rook. And now Gukesh sacks his queen. He goes queen takes a3. Wow. And I mean, it reminds us of the game of Vaikanze as well, where Gukesh sacrifices the queen for a rook and a piece. Rook takes d3. Queen f6. And now rook a d1 played by Gukesh. The queen comes into b2, attacking the pawn. Black is the one that has to be careful here because the knight has a great square here. The d pawn is strong. Queen to b5 played by Vincent. And Gukesh plays pawn to h3. He's playing it quick. He's trying to keep a lead on the clock. Rook d8, and now the rook comes to c1. Eventually, I think rook d5 and rook takes c5 could be an idea. And Vincent, by the way, is down to 12 minutes. He's attacking the pawn on d6. Knight comes to c4. Now calmly defending this. Also attacking a3. Queen e4 played. Now knight takes a3, taking the free pawn. He takes it. Knight takes. We have queen f4 attacking here and here. And he goes rook d1. There was a very nice variation. If knight c4, rook takes d6. If knight takes, I take the rook. If rook takes, the other rook is hanging. So rook c d1, queen a4. Gukesh brings his knight back to b1. Little bit passive now is the knight. But white has now a rook, knight and 2 pawns. So materially white is doing really, really well. And Gukesh pushes the pawn to d7. Whoa. This is very, very intense now. And also we are 3 moves away from move 40. King f8 played by Vincent. Rook to d4. Attacking the pawn on c4. And queen takes pawn happens. You have rook to h4 trying to give a check. The king moves back to g8. And he goes knight to c3. The queen comes back to a7 now. The pawn on d7 is hanging. He brings his rook in. But maybe it's not so easy to make progress. Now 40 moves completed. Both players have 30 extra minutes. Vincent goes pawn to g6. And Gukesh goes pawn to h4. Can Gukesh make progress? Like if he can get his knight into the game somehow, I mean to the c6 square, it could mean something. But all of this is only possible in imagination. On the board, it seems like there is nothing much that can be done. Knight e4. Queen c6. Knight c3. Queen b7. Knight e4. Queen comes back to c6 and knight c3, and a draw is offered. A draw is agreed. A great game by the two youngsters. I must say it was very enjoyable to follow this game. And Vincent is saying like he basically maybe forgot his preparation. Yeah, Gukesh misses this opportunity to get something more. I am pretty sure that he had an edge there, but Vincent defended very well, never letting Gukesh's advantage go out of hand. And the last round remains. Vincent is now on 4 points, Gukesh on 3 points. We have some footage for you as the players exit to give you a feel of being in Prague.
Hello,